Angela, and this is the HOMESTEADucation podcast, where we talk all things homesteading, and we want to share our passion and experience for this lifestyle with you.
Hello, everybody. Oh my gosh, we're back. What's it been? Like 4 years?
For real.
It feels like. It's Mandi and Angela, HOMESTEADucation. How is everyone? We hope so good. It's almost fall. I mean, really, it feels like it's been forever since we've done this because it really has been. Angela, how are you?
I'm good. I'm
Good.
good. How
Good.
are you?
I'm good. Before we always chat. If you're new here, we always kind of chat before we record, just touching up and bantering about whatever's going on this morning or what happened during chores or in life in general. And we just decided we should probably just hit record. We're back today, kicking off this season, the new season, and we just want to kind of give an update. But what we were talking about is, I mean, timely. We were kind of just chatting life. Angela's asking me, how is it obviously having a baby and figuring out all of these new things. And I was asking Angela, like, where are you in this season? And Angela, you had a good point just now. We have been homesteading for many years. How long?
For me, 10.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, for me about 8. So, living this lifestyle for a long time. I mean, right? So when we decided it was time to definitely, pick back up this season, we wanted to discuss, like I said, changes and just kind of go into what's been going on. But we were just talking about how you get to this pivotal point when you've been doing something, anything, a job or whatever, so this job, homesteading, where you get to a point and it's not new, you're established, and things start to kind of shift or change. You certainly, kind of have your pockets of which is, things are the most important. You're not really picking up like a lot of new things per se. You might be building on things that you already know. I don't know, all to say, we just kind of wanted to discuss what's going on. And I don't know, there's been a lot of changes. Angela will kind of dive into what's new at her place, because you have a lot of new things happening at your place, like in the past month. And by a lot, I mean like metric ton, a lot of new things.
Yeah, true.
So go for it.
Okay, so Mandy and I, yes, we catch up before, but we chat constantly, multiple times a week. And I check in with Mandy regularly. She checks in with me regularly. And it's funny because even though we're always talking to each other, there's always something new. And that goes for anybody in their life, right? We always have new stories. We're always meeting new people. There's always new dynamics and things going on in relationships. But with the farm, one of the comforts of homesteading is that we have this sort of day-to-day routine, right? And there's a lot of variability in the day-to-day routine, but we have structure. Animals need structure. They need food and water at a certain time. And then, yes, animals get sick. But, in addition to this daily routine, there's also just different phases or seasons of homesteading. And I don't mean literal seasons as in fall, winter, spring, and summer. I mean, we go through shifts from setting up the farm, establishing fencing, getting the animals, learning our way around to X, Y, and Z, and then deciding to add something else. And then things change as animals age, they become sick. We have predator pressure, always. We have new ways of doing something that might be more efficient. We decide to take on permaculture, hand raised, and find different ways of doing things that might suit us or land better. And so there's always just these different seasons. Well, having been homesteading for 10 years, I am at the point now where I'm starting to unfortunately see a turnover in some of our animal residents. And this this summer we had a lot of loss. It was 2023 was the summer of loss for me. The first thing I lost was a goose who had choked on an apple that had dropped from a tree. And I did a YouTube video about that, whatever, if you're interested, but I couldn't save it. And, there's like the avian Heimlich even, and I could not save this goose's life. So that passed. And then we had a golden retriever who was diagnosed with brain cancer, and that ran its course. And we kept the dog comfortable as best we could, but that also passed away. The dog died this summer. The most devastating loss, the most unexpected and heartbreaking thing was that I lost my Clydesdale Finnegan, who is my partner, not just a horse that I pet, take out and ride. This guy, like, I relied on him every single day. And he was there for me every single day. And it wasn't just me that was relying on him. When you have horses, they're very herd oriented animals. They find safety and daily comfort with their herd mates. And so when you take one of those herd mates away, they get so anxious that it shows up physically. They get ulcers, they get colic, they get sick. So as I'm processing this unexpected grief, I'm now trying to balance keeping this horse who's already had colic surgery once, and she's very prone to it. I'm trying to keep her healthy and find a stable mate. And it was a really insane 4 or 5 weeks. Short of it is I ended up bringing in 2 draft horses. So now my stable has gone from, Dozer and this rescue that I had, Finnegan, to Dozer, a new rescue Percheron named Sholto, and then just a baby, a 4-year-old Clydesdale named Nevin. And it's not just the third stall that I had to build or learning their behaviors and what they like and don't like and how they operate, right? They have personalities just as anything or anyone does. It's now the herd dynamics. They are not all getting along. And it's new. It's going to take time, but oh, man, it's been a lot these last couple of months.
I think that's the part that, and I think we say this all the time. Like we get on these, we start talking and then I'm like, oh, well, we could talk about this for 4 hours. We're not going to, everybody. We're not going to talk about it for 4 hours, but, that's the part that people don't see, that don't, it's not just you have loss and then you grieve that loss and then you bring something new in, and then it's so much deeper than that. It's like you said, figuring out all the new dynamics and everything like that, but you also have to, I feel like, I don't want to take away from, just somebody who has, a cat in an apartment or, that doesn't act, it's not a comparison, but like what you were saying is, you rely on these animals, you have these animals for pleasure, but also for a job or what have you. And it's also trying to figure out what happened to then potentially prevent it, or it's just deeper than that. It's just more than that. And I think that's the part that's so hard to articulate sometimes. And, to be honest, it's the part that like people maybe just don't think about when they begin to do stuff like this. You get so excited and you have all these, baby, goats or chicks. And then it's like, what do you do when, you're 5, 6, 7, 10 years down the road, and it's almost like starting over. I mean, like, I feel like in a way for you, it's like you're figuring out how to blend everything again, like what we were talking about before when we were kind of referencing how I was feeling after having a baby and kind of like losing who I was, homesteading, and it's kind of my identity, and now I'm a mom. So it's like trying to merge those things. You're trying to take, like, for your example with the new horses, you're trying to it's not going to be how it was before, but we want it to be the way it was before because that's what we're used to. And like, that's all you know. Exactly. That's all you know. Um, do
It's
you
like
want
when you're in the beginning phases of getting, a homesteader, I can say this because I have these. We have the online courses for how to start beekeeping. We have the online courses for how to start a garden.
mm-hmm,
Where's the online courses for the seasoned
mm-hmm,
people, right? Like only then can those really experienced mentors that you hopefully have in your life, only then are they the ones to come in and really be able to help you through that.
yeah,
If I didn't have my friend who's had horses for years and years and years and had a trailer, it would have been a much more of a nightmare for getting Finnegan the help that he needed than what it was. Granted, yes, I have the vet, but there are people that had to know enough not only about animal husbandry and horse care in this particular example, but also know me and my practices, that after the fact, when I'm questioning and saying, maybe I didn't do this, and they're like, no, 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 that now
mm-hmm,
you're getting tying emotion to it. That's not that's not what it would have caused this. Yes, again, I asked the vet and they're like, no, it wasn't something that could have been prevented. It wasn't something that you could or shouldn't have done.
do you want
Um,
to tell people like, I mean, without getting like too far into the weeds, if but do you want to say what did happen?
yeah, so I it was a regular week, no signs, no symptoms. I had sensed that Finnegan was getting old. He's a rescue. I got him when he was probably in his early 20s. He was with me for 7 years. And you could see visibly that he was aging, but he was, still willing to carry a light load for me. It was very good for him because he needs that daily exercise to keep arthritis away. All that to say, he was still operating and doing well.
Yeah.
There are no signs. One morning I went up there, 6:30 a.m. for the morning feed, and he was laying on his side. It had been raining all night long, and so
Which
uh,
is not normal for horses. I mean,
right,
typically, well, I mean, you might see a young horse laying on their side in the sunshine, like getting a little sun nap, but it's abnormal. So, okay.
yeah. So usually horses will sleep 1 hour on their side or down on the ground out of every 24 hours. So the rest of the time they sleep standing up. So I knew based on the time of day, okay, something's already off. He's usually not down this time in the morning. It had been raining all night. So yes, the ground was wet, but he was absolutely in his own little pig pile of mud. It was in his eyes, it was in his hair, it was in his ears. He could not get up. And so I thought, okay, he's injured, he's got a broken leg, or we're looking at a colic situation. And colic is where it's like a wide vast thing that basically means a stomach ache for horses, and it can go just from built up gas and pressure all the way to twisted intestines. So there's different levels of severity. So I tried getting him up, didn't want to get up, and I went and got the hose because he needed his eyes washed out and he needed his hair washed out, but also he hates baths. And so I thought if he's going to get up, this is what's going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I grabbed the hose. He got up, and I thought, okay, I very quickly assessed it's not an injury. We don't have a broken leg. But then he went into a stall and he slammed his body against the wall. And I was like, okay, he's colicking, and clearly severely, to the point where we've got some internal damage because when they're at the point of like trying to throw themselves against something,
Yeah,
it hurts
it's painful.
very much so. I called the vet. I called three vets. One came out on short notice. And I also called my friend while I was waiting for the vet to come over and take a turn walking. When horses get stomach aches, sometimes walking them, just
Mhm.
regular motion. Motility in the hooves and in the legs is tied to motility in the gut. And
Mhm.
sometimes, if you're lucky, if you get them walking, you can get their gut to restart. And so she came over to help me walk. Sean, my husband, was helping me walk. The vet shows up and says, look, it's colic. I think it's pretty severe. He needs to go to the clinic ASAP. I don't keep a trailer. I don't travel with my horses for health reasons and also just for stress reasons. Got my friend Elizabeth's trailer. She had to empty all her hay out of it, rushed it over, hooked it up to our truck. and we got him to the clinic, and they're like, we're not even going to go through typical tests. We're not going to do the ultrasound. We're just going to bypass everything. Let's just get him on the table. His heart rate's very high. And so I got a call about an hour later that his intestinal band, which I didn't know was a thing, ruptured. Apparently, all the intestines are held together by these tendons, these bands, and it had ruptured. And as a result of that rupture, that's why he colicked. Then his intestines twist, right? Because there's nothing holding them together.
Holding together, right?
If he had not had that rupture, we would have been fine.
Yeah.
What causes the rupture? Well, it's just something that old horses, it happens. Like they're just done. They're worn out. And he said it in addition to that, I guess the drafts are supposed to be somewhat predisposed to this. And the short of it is, it was just Finnegan's time. Of course, I'm sobbing and begging on the phone. Isn't there anything that you can do? Can you cut out the damaged part? Blah, blah, blah. There's just nothing to be done.
Yeah.
Especially because we're talking about like a 30-year-old horse. So we had to say goodbye to Finn. That was the end. So it all started at 6:30 a.m. I got up in the morning thinking it was going to be a regular day, and by noon, my partner was dead.
Yeah.
So it was a very intense 6 hours, and it happened very quickly.
Yeah, and I'm just like so sorry for that. I feel like I feel it when you talk about it. I mean, obviously we talked about it, we have talked about it, but but that's just it. Like I feel like when we started this podcast, or before we even knew each other, I would say just like we want people to know how magical this lifestyle is, and also how heartbreaking it can be. And it can be both, right? It is both. There's no way you get one without the other. You just don't. Yeah. So, I mean, again, if you're new here, it's kind of what we do. We kind of talk about, little obviously educational pieces and what we do and how we do it. But there's a lot of real life that comes with it. So yeah, I don't know. That's tough.
It is tough, and it makes me so thankful and appreciate seasoned homesteaders and my mentors so much more. When we're looking at setting up a farm or a homestead, we just ask such basic questions because we don't know any better.
Sure. I mean, yeah. I mean, the basic question is like, how do you get started? Right?
Yeah.
Like, what animals should I get first? Or
what do you feed your animal?
Yeah. Yeah.
What do I look for when I buy a horse? Or how long do I incubate eggs? Those kinds of things. And those are things that are so easy to find answers to, right? They can be black and white.
Mm-hmm.
But then you get to
this stage,
actual grit, the life of it, the hardships, the things that actually make you seasoned.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh man, I mean, would I trade it? No. I brought in more. I'm gonna keep doing this, right? I got more rescues. Keep doing what I'm doing, but it's like that amount of knowledge and wisdom that comes with unfortunately experiencing these things, you cannot put a price on that.
And maybe that's what we'll talk about a little bit more this season, is the seasons, and being seasoned, for lack of a better word, again. And like you said, the real shit that comes with it, because yeah, it is it's like so layered. For your example with, how long do you incubate chicks? Great. But then like there's so many other things that come after that. So those beginning answers, or those beginning questions, they are black and white, and then it starts to get gray, and then you start to get into the weeds. And to your point earlier, where's the support, and where are the answers, and where are the people that really want to show up for everybody else trying to figure it out when they get there?
I
Hi,
mean, maybe,
we're here.
maybe though, because it is so gray and
Yeah.
there's so many variables, right? Your feed, your animals, your breed, the
Mhm.
age, whatever, your
Yep.
practices, the way you do things, where
Yep.
you, maybe there just can't be sort of a set of
Yeah.
constant.
I mean, yeah, there's probably a lot of truth in that. Yeah. Yeah.
Doesn't make it any easier though.
No, sure doesn't.
Let's talk about your seasoned homesteading challenge.
Oh gosh. Well, I mean, aside from having a 6 month old, I'm just kidding. She's like the best thing ever. Shortly after, I was, or Angela was telling me all of the stuff that happened with Finn, and I think it was like the next day or
For
something
real.
like that, or like, we lost, gosh, I mean, don't have favorites, but we lost a goat. Um, we have battled badly and have never before, Barber pole worms. So,
You want to
it
tell people what that
is
is?
what?
You want to tell people what that is for those that don't know?
Yeah, so it's intestinal parasite, gastrointestinal. I mean, it, people talk about it all the time, like, parasites you deal with. Do you deal with any, Barber pole worms are an intestinal parasite that you just like don't want to have. They're very hard to get rid of. And Angela and I, backing up, we were like, where did they come from? They have to come from somewhere.
Yeah,
Um,
it's not something that's just like one of those
yeah, they don't just
magically
show up. They
appears,
they
right?
they, they come from, somebody has to be impacted, and then typically, when we talk about, it, homunculus contortus is what you'll see if you do any type of research. But this type of parasite, and we figured out what they had after, the goat passed away. We were at the vet, and we did some tests, and they get to a point where they're fine, usually, and then you start to notice maybe they're a little bit off or something like that, and it really goes from about 0 to 100 in usually about 2 or 3 days. This particular parasite lives in the abomasum, which is the fourth compartment of a ruminant's stomach. And how it nourishes, how the parasite survives, is it sucks blood from the host. So typically you start to see anemia, the animal might pant, things like that. But usually when you are at this stage, it's too late. Um, so I knew it was parasites. I knew that right off the bat. You can pretty much, just, if you've been doing it for so long, you kind of just know. The reproductive cycle of this particular parasite is very rapid, thousands and thousands of larvae in a very short period of time. And it really likes it when it's been hot and humid and rainy. So we've never dealt with this before. Obviously, had to come from somewhere. Um, but we've had we had a lot of rain. It is very humid. We live in Missouri, so it's rainy and humid all the time, but it was even more so, I feel like, this summer, this particular, season. Uh, so, you identify what's going on, but the bigger picture about all of it, we lost, a business. I mean, like, we rely on those goats for our business, not just like pleasure, right? I mean, they do also have a job, that we take very good care of them. And so you get to, you have all of these like intrusive, thoughts, like, did I not do, like you were saying, kind of about Finn, and you're talking with your friends and things like that that are back home with you, or at, not here, so because I'm your friend, but, you're like, what if I did this? And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like down there in the barn, like literally throwing, X, Y, and Z at this goat, doing fluids and, all of these things. And I'm like, just trying to get her to like survive until morning to get her to, to the vet. And, um, yeah, I don't know. It's like so much bigger than that. Then you start to worry about everybody else. And so that was kind of everybody else is fine. Um, we, you know, and like you were saying, with everybody practices differently, does different stuff. We don't deworm on a routine schedule here. Maybe that's a definite podcast for coming up here in these, you know, coming up weeks, because it's, I mean, we can dive deep into that, but we practice what's called refugia, or with horses. A lot of times you will hear that a lot of people will just deworm like the shedders. With goats specifically, and sheep, but more goats than sheep, we have dewormed them so much all across the country and the world, really, to be honest, that they have such a high tolerance, resistance, and tolerance. I mean, like they can be used interchangeably, but the medications that we have to give them, you have to give them so much for them to work that sometimes they still don't work. So all to say, we don't routinely deworm. Everybody has been dewormed now. You know, but it's just like those things. You get to a point, and this goat was a little bit older, but you get to a point where you've done this for so long and you haven't had these things happen. We talk about them, and then they do happen, and it really knocks you down. I mean, like, some things are, you know, could I have prevented this? Maybe, but honestly, probably not. I mean, like,
You couldn't have, because it came in from an outside source somehow.
yeah, I know. And then, you know, we're at the vet the morning, and we did blood work to kind of just like assess where she was, and her, what we call it, hematocrit. So basically, like the amount of like red blood cells she has to sustain life was not sustainable with life. It was 6%. I mean, like, that's very, very, very low for those not familiar with that word or what that means. I mean, that's not compatible with life. And so we were looking at a blood transfusion, which would have to come from another goat. You can't, you know, so it's just like a lot of things. And so we ended up humanely euthanizing her, and, you know, taking that pain away. But then it doesn't, you know, you go from doing that like so quickly, and then I'm like running home to treat everybody else. So it's almost like sometimes in this lifestyle, or just in general, and I was just thinking about this honestly this morning. I just went and sat in the garden. And I've talked about it on social media, and we've talked about it here. We don't have you don't get the time to like breathe. I mean, like, for you, it's like these two scenarios, and just in general, you know, it's not just this one animal. Like, it's not just Finn that you lost, that you had, right? You didn't just have him. You then had to very quickly, you know, feel that pain, and then figure out, okay, well, what am I going to do now for everybody else? In your case, Dozer, like, and for me, I'm like, okay, well, what am I going to do to make sure that everybody else is good? I don't know. So I think that we should maybe talk a little bit more about, we can do a parasite, you know, kind of talk about maybe what you do, and I can talk maybe about what we do or what we don't do. In an upcoming episode.
I
All
think
to
that's
say,
fine.
I don't, like I said, we could talk about stuff like this. And again, if this is the first time that you're listening, sometimes we kind of get off on these tangents, but it's almost like we want you to feel like you're sitting in a room with us, and we're just kind of chatting, and you're talking to your friends. And because if you're going through something, or you're dealing with whatever, and you can listen to this and be like, okay, well, my, you know, specific scenario is similar to that, well, you're not alone. And so, I mean, if anybody tries to paint the picture that it's just like, I don't know, there, it's, we all start somewhere, and then we all have to get, you know, you get to these places where you have hard decisions, or something happens, and it's all just seasons in this it's life in general. But
I feel like I don't want to say to take it to a more rudimentary level, but maybe something that's more accessible for those who don't have small or large livestock. It's like
yeah,
if you have a bird, let's say you just keep poultry, and you run into angel wing or
Yeah.
straddle, right? So chances are that when you start keeping poultry, the majority of your birds aren't going to have a problem if
Okay.
you have sanitary living conditions and give them the right feed and get good stock and all of the basic rudimentary fundamentals we do in order to try to keep a lot of problems at bay. We're not trying to get like heavily incestuous with our breeding, that sort of thing.
Right.
But chances are at some point, if you've been doing it long enough and you've had enough exposure to animals, and hopefully you spend enough time observing your animals, you start to run into some of these challenges because it is just sort of the natural course
It's just
of
the
things,
progression. Yeah.
part of things, especially with age. When you start having older animals, we're going to start seeing um, maybe you run into, depending on the poultry you keep, higher levels of coccidia in your chickens, or maybe you have more and more bumblefoot as your peaked birds get more weight on them. And I don't know, I guess it just goes back to what I said before. It comes with time, and we are both well past the point of having young or new animals and young farms and
The
homes.
newness is gone.
Mhm.
Right. I mean, like,
And I think this is where a lot of people start throwing in the towel, honestly.
yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Yeah.
Because it gets,
The newness is gone, and you get to a point where it is, you're doing it for your family. You're doing it like, this is who I am. This is like who you are. Right. But I agree with you. I think that this is where, when you get to this season and it starts to become really hard for some people.
yeah, we cannot foresee everything. We cannot prevent everything. And if you are in tune with your animals and hopefully you have good husbandry practices, you can prevent a lot of common
Mhm.
issues. But that's not to say that there aren't going to be issues, because that is the nature of homesteading. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Um, I just am so happy to be back, and so happy that you all, are here with us, and there's more to come with all these, deep conversations and things like that. But cheers, Angela. I'm so sorry for your loss of Finn.
And for
Um,
you,
yeah, thanks. But if anybody, gosh, I feel like we went from, hi, we're here, we're back, and then it was like, oh, these sad things, but really, all just to kind of wrap it up. If you're in this season with us, you're good. We're here. And it's also fine. Maybe just take kind of a step back and, take a deep breath and um, maybe reevaluate some things. There's absolutely no harm, no shame in that. And change is good. Change is okay. But if you're in this, like we're in this, you're in it for a reason. So
and
just
hardship isn't
remember,
a reason to quit.
yeah,
You're just
just remember
building,
that.
you're
Yeah,
building your
yeah,
life.
yeah, for sure.
Hey, good.
We're good.
All right. Thank you for your patience with us. Hopefully, this episode has also served as an explanation as to why we've been so busy and haven't been able to jump back on the podcast. But we have a set schedule in mind. Hopefully,
Mhm.
um, life and this season doesn't take that away from us. We're going to try to post regularly. So, thank you so much for your patience with us. Thank you for your encouragement and your questions and your interest in us getting back on the airwaves, I guess. And
Definitely.
yeah, we will be back very soon.
Very soon. Cheers, you all.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the HOMESTEADucation podcast. Any relevant material will be put in the show notes. We hope you'll share our episodes and also click that subscribe button. For more information about this podcast, you can visit us on Instagram at HOMESTEADucation Podcast. Angela can be found online at axeandroothomestead.com and on Instagram at axeandroothomestead. Mandi can also be found online at thefarmermandy.com and on Instagram at Wild Oak Farms. We'll see you next time.